Welcome to EWA's FIN-LYT podcast. EWA is a fee-only RIA based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We hope all listeners of this podcast will benefit as we deep dive into complex financial topics that we will make simplified for you. And we hope that this really serves as a catalyst so that you can make the best financial planning decisions for your family and also save time.
Okay, welcome to another episode of FIN-LYT by EWA. I'm joined by my colleague, Ben Ruttenberg. Ben, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Today we're going to talk about a little topic regarding the art of spending versus saving. So, quick overview, Ben. We see this all the time with our clients, right? There's this balance. It's a delicate balance that needs to be struck between saving too much and saving too little, aka spending too much and spending too little, right? So we see it all the time, and this is one of the things that we try to guard against, right? So it's about the equilibrium, it's about the balance, and at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we don't want to happen is people to wake up at 80 years old and regret something. Again, that's either just dying with too much money and not enjoying it while they could have, or maybe at some point in retirement running out of money. So we obviously don't want that either, right? Anything to add?
No, it's so true, and we'll get into the psychology behind it and how this works in practice. But like you said, we want to avoid someone looking back, saving, over accumulating, and then sitting in their 70s and 80s looking back saying, I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wish we took that trip. We have all this money. We don't know how to spend it. That is a failure on the advisor to not encourage the client to live their life in more balance and enjoy the time along the way. And on the flip side, if you spend in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you don't save anything, and then you're getting ready to retire and you're very stressed, you don't know if you have enough, and you look back and say, man, I wish I had saved more. I wish I was more disciplined with my financial plan. We don't want that either. So like you said, it's a balancing act, and there's a lot of strategies involved in getting that equilibrium, like you said, making sure that you're saving enough to accomplish your goals, but you're not saving so much that feel like you're going to have some regrets along the way.
Mm-hmm. So we primarily work with high income and or high asset clients, high net worth. Do you see more of folks saving too much or spending too much? Is there a kind of a breakdown?
Yeah, it's hard to say like percentage wise. I do see a lot of big time savers. Oftentimes, if you're successful, high net worth, you have the mindset of I'm going to be saving this, and this is money that I want either passed down to future generations. And we say it a lot that like really good savers are just bad spenders. So like when they get to a point where they're actually retired or going to be distributing their assets, they almost have a hard time doing it because it's a totally different muscle than the muscle that they've built for the last 40 years of accumulating their nest egg. So it can be a hard mindset shift to turn down and spend it, but that becomes the advisor's job to make sure they're living their life in balance and spending in a reasonable amount.
Yep. Okay, let's go over the psychology behind oversaving, right? So there's a few kind of tropes, a few things that we see that are very common within our clients, right? So the easiest one and the most common one, maybe from my perspective, is the scarcity mindset, right? So it's the classic. Maybe you grew up with little money. You didn't have much. You go to college, you get a good job, you start making good money, and you're kind of on that saving track for, like you said, for 40 years, right? Yeah. So what's the hurdle that a lot of people have to overcome in order to maybe flip that switch from saving to spending? Any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, the first point is how you grew up with money makes a huge impact as to how you plan with money the rest of your life. It's how your parents were, how you grew up with money, how your cousins were, how your grandparents were. Did you grow up in a family where they saved every last dollar? Did you grow up in a family where they spent every last dollar? That really, and it's oftentimes the reverse. If you grew up in a family that spent every last dollar, you grew up so scarred from it that you're like, I need to save. And then vice versa. If you grew up with a family that kind of saved every last dollar and didn't have those experiences, oftentimes those clients want to turn around and give those experiences to their kids and spend. So it's an interesting kind of dichotomy there of how you grow up with money and how that impacts your decision making. But the psychology behind oversaving, it's so true. Having that scarcity mindset, never feeling like you have enough. So always like comparing yourself to your neighbors or your coworkers or your peers. Obviously, there's a fear of running out of money in retirement. There's always a question about Social Security and people's supporting their parents, and they don't want to be in a position where they feel like they want to be a burden on their kids. So saving so much that they don't want to feel like they're a burden, that is definitely a huge factor in people saving maybe more than they should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these days, I think that maybe the childhood aspect is a bit overstated, but it can't really be understated in the same way. So, and it's I love how you said how some people grow up without much money, and you want to generalize and say that those folks will be heavy savers, but we see it all the time where they've worked hard for X amount of years and they never had money as a kid, so they're blowing it out during their high earning years, so to speak, and vice versa, right? They grow up with a lot of money, and for whatever reason they feel like they need to save, and then they wake up in their 60s, 70s with too much money, more money than they'll ever be able to spend, right?
We see it all the time.
Yeah. Either way, okay. Let's switch to the psychology behind overspending. So this is more of a fun one. So it's kind of the opposite of that scarcity mindset. It's that abundance mindset, but sometimes it tips over into how do we say, like a problem, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's comparing yourself to your coworkers. We kind of mentioned this before, neighbors, friends. You see your neighbor with a big house and a big car, you feel like you got to fit in, have a big house and a big car, or a nice car, I should say. But those are assets that people see, and it's easy to look at that and say, oh, that guy or that girl is absolutely financially well off. Look at that car, look at that house. Those are the assets you see. The assets you don't see are, what's their relationship with their kids? Like, do they have, are they tax efficient? Like all the things that they could be doing behind the scenes that you wouldn't see just from their lifestyle assets. That's really going to tell a better story of their financial health as opposed to the house they live in or the car they drive. Those are just more of the things you see on the outside, and ultimately not the stuff that really dictates someone's financial well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's kind of the classic chasing status.
Yeah.
I don't know, emotional crutch, let's call it, right?
Yeah.
We see it all the time. Would you say that there's a most common asset or thing that clients overspend on, like maybe too big of a house or multiple cars?
So
like what's
we see that all the time. I think like a good, and we'll get into like the framework of like a good solid financial plan, but we oftentimes see people just not get house poor, but their housing payment eats up way too much of their budget. And if they have so many other goals, it's hard to keep a financial plan on track when someone's housing payment is more than, call it 30% of their take-home pay. And then they've got another big chunk coming out for a car payment, daycare costs, all these things add up. And then they turn around and say, well, there's no, I want to send my kids to education, but I don't have any money left over.
Mm-hmm.
I want to plan for retirement outside of my 401k. There's just not enough money there. So that's where we see financial plans kind of go awry, is when the spending on those items eats up too much of the budget.
Yep. So we mentioned at the beginning that what we strive to obtain, what we strive to achieve for our clients is balance, equilibrium, right? So what are some frameworks for getting into balance? It's easy to say to somebody, hey, you've been saving for 40 years, now just stop. It's easy to tell somebody that grew up with very little money to stop spending, and vice versa, right? So what's kind of the framework that we operate under in order to kind of help clients achieve that balance?
Yeah, it's number one, building a financial plan. I'm not just saying that as a financial advisor sitting here with another financial advisor, but it's the honest truth. Sometimes we'll sit down with a client and ask about their retirement or their financial independence, and they say, well, I want to get to 5 million. I want to get to 10 million. And then I just follow up and ask why.
Mm.
And sometimes I'll just get a blank stare. It's like, well, I don't know. I thought that's how much I needed to sustain my lifestyle, to do X, Y, and Z. And, there's not really a reasonable explanation for the number that some people just have in their heads. So getting a financial plan and setting goals, but at the same time of setting goals, setting realistic goals and making sure that they're prioritized. So sometimes we'll sit down with a client and say, well, I want to retire at 50. I want to send my 3 kids all to Ivy League schools. I want to get a second house. I want to help my parents. It's like, okay, let's prioritize these and let's make sure that we are building the plan around what's most important. So I think that's where plans can go right too, is when you don't have a goal kind of a goal prioritization almost. Like you want to do all these things, but none is taking ownership over the other. So sometimes we'll ask clients, hey, what would you rather do? Kind of door A or door B. Would you rather work till 65 and send all three of your kids to whatever school they want to go to? Or would you want to work until 60 or 58 and be able to cover half of their education? Which door would you walk into? And that'll just help them in the back of their head say, okay, I am actually prioritizing education, or I am actually prioritizing financial independence. And if you can get that buy-in initially, it's much easier to create a financial plan than if you're trying to figure out that buy-in after you start one. So that's really important. And then the more things you can automate in your financial plan, the better. So we talk about, dividing your savings and spending, right? So like reverse budgeting, we have multiple resources on that, but automating your monthly savings alongside some of your other spending, and then giving yourself permission to spend from a variable standpoint is really important. So again, this is all part of that reverse budgeting technique that we've talked about, but basically putting all of your monthly savings and important bills into one bank account and then your discretionary spending into another, knowing in the back of your head, hey, we are going to be able to spend down our discretionary account down to zero because all of our savings are on track from our fixed account. So that's just one of the ways that we can help get a client back in equilibrium, is sorting out, getting a plan together, and then automating it as much as possible.
So let's say we have a client that is on board with spending in alignment with their goals and their values, right? So what are some things that we tell them? Because even though they're kind of mentally ready, it's really tough to start spending the money that you've saved over the last 40 years. So any tips or tricks for clients? So for example, like a classic one is helping them go through like a mind exercise of understanding what it's like to actually spend on things like experience rather than having all their money stashed away into various assets. Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's so true. And investing in experiences and not just assets, that gives people a lot of purpose and it makes people happy. So if we're working with a client that is approaching retirement, maybe it's travel with family and grandkids, and maybe it's moving closer to them to spend more time with them. Oftentimes their time becomes more and more valuable as they get older. So from a spending standpoint, it's not necessarily we have super high net worth clients that are going out, buying brand new X, Y, and Z's in their 60s and 70s. It becomes more about the experiences and who they're with. And so that can help kind of break the dam a little bit on spending, because oftentimes we'll sit down with a client, they have everything they need. There's not a new thing that they want. Really what they want is their time and the full freedom to do whatever they want. So that can help accelerate those conversations, is making sure that they're spending time on experiences and things that they care about, and not like the new fad or the new thing.
Yeah, and it's all well and good to have more qualitative conversations, but there's we're financial advisors. We love the numbers. So what are the tools that we use to help clients to see to kind of picture, both from a numbers and also like a graphical standpoint, what their retirement could look like if they were to do ABC instead of XYZ?
Yeah, so there's the analytical side, and then there's like the personal side. So analytically, we build out through our eMoney software, giving them kind of full peace of mind, so to speak, on when they can retire, what they can spend if they follow X, Y, and Z recommendations. And I think people like seeing that. We're able to toggle on different spending assumptions, different retirement ages. So it really gives them a good picture of where they stand today and where they can be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So that's kind of the analytical side. And the personal side is more, sometimes we'll go through what's called a values exercise with our clients, helping them prioritize between 5 and 10 of the most important values that they have in their life. And what that means is we can help coordinate their financial plan based on the values that they find most important. And that can be really relevant for someone that's in the distribution phase, making sure that if they prioritize their time or their family, but their financial plan is, they don't live anywhere close to their family. They have no travel planned. They have no vacations planned. That would set off a red flag for me that, their financial plan is not supporting what's most important to them. And so if we can bring it back to their values and what's most important and help design a plan that carries those out, that can be really impactful and really rewarding and help keep a plan in balance so that someone doesn't end up passing away with a boatload of money and not feeling like they either enjoyed it enough or they prepped their next of kin for how to deal with money. That's a whole separate conversation of, gifting and, estate planning, but seeing your kids and grandkids use the money while you're living, that can be very valuable for high net worth clients that are retired.
Any recent poignant examples of situation where we went through the exercise and clients had that kind of light bulb moment where they said, "Oh, I can actually spend on these things, these things that I value when X days or months ago, I didn't think that was possible."
100%. Yeah, it does happen. It's, the values, especially for someone in the accumulating phase, it's important, but, really in the distribution phase, it can help prioritize goals and help get a financial plan tracking with what's most important to you. It really does. It really is a powerful exercise.
Yeah, and I think it ends where we started, is that we want clients to have no regrets at or near the end of their life, right? Again, you don't want somebody on their deathbed with more money than they'll ever need, and they're just going to give it to charities or their kids, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe that's not what they wanted necessarily. Maybe they sacrificed, vacations or experiences with their kids or their grandkids while they were alive, and all of a sudden they're passing with significant assets they could have used to kind of make those memories.
Yeah.
Right.
I take it, and it's the job of the advisor to make sure that plan is being followed. It would be easy for the advisor to keep the account as big as possible, not have them spend anything, because that is revenue for the firm. I mean, let's just be honest. If the account's bigger, that's more revenue for the firm. So it's on the advisor to, if the client has stressed that enjoying their financial independence is the most important thing to them, and they're not spending to the level that they could be, it's on the advisor to challenge the client to spend more, to travel more, to do X, Y, and Z that they've discussed as most important. That is doing your job as much as getting someone to that point where they can be doing that. Because if you don't, you really didn't do your job to help the client. You managed the money, that's great, but did they enjoy it to the extent that they could have, or that they worked for the last 40 years for? Who's to say? So it's the job of the advisor to make sure that someone gets to that point. I think that's kind of table stakes, but once they are at that point, it's then the advisor's job to make sure that they're enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like that term financial advisor doesn't really do it justice. It's a bunch of jobs kind of like morphed into one.
Financial therapist.
Yeah, therapist, lifestyle designer. I think therapist is a good one. Advisor, whatever you want to call it. It's really just about kind of crafting the ideal lifestyle of your client and helping them get there, which is it at the end of the day. So
thanks for tuning in to our podcast. Hopefully you found this helpful. Really hope this is as beneficial and impactful to as many people across the nation as possible. So hit the follow button. Make sure to rate the podcast, and please share with any friends or family members that would also find this beneficial. Thank you very much.